brought up the running backs.
Yeah.
The running back carousel has been absolutely crazy. This is a market that the discussion point last year when you and I were talking this time of year, it was, hey, are these guys ever going to be able to get money? This year, we see the carousel, as you see here. DeAndre Swift out with the Eagles. Saquon Barkley in as Swift goes to the Bears. Obviously, Barkley out with the Giants. Devin Singletary in with him as Singletary leaves the Texans. Joe Mixon is in via a trade with the Bengals. The Bengals get Zach Moss to replace him. The Vikings cut Alexander Madison. They go get Aaron Jones from the division rival Green Bay. Who does Green Bay replace Aaron Jones with? But a big money deal to Josh Jacobs, one of the best backs in the league. Antonio Gibson leaves the Commanders for the Patriots. The Commanders go get Austin Eckler as their pass-catching back. As the Chargers lose Eckler, they get more of a bang between the tackle
Jim
guy
Harbaugh
for
type of guy.
Harbaugh and Gus Edwards, the Gus Bus. And, the Ravens needed a replacement for the Gus Bus. They go get Derrick Henry. And then the Titans, as they lose Derrick Henry, they get Tony Pollard. Let's start it with this, Chris. Who is the best fit out of these guys, this giant game of musical chairs at the running back position?
That's a great question there. There's a lot to dive into with this conversation and why it's gone this way. Right? I at a base level, I think the big thing is this, where, hey, maybe some of these guys still aren't getting the value that I'd like to see out there. The value has gone up, and I think a little bit of that is because I do think teams got to be looking at it going, wait, we don't need Adrian Peterson, but having a good running back definitely makes your team different on that side of the ball. Again, Isaiah Pacheco, Christian McCaffrey with the 49ers, Jahmyr Gibbs and the Detroit Lions. I think those are lessons to be learned this year, throughout football, where teams are like, well, yeah, okay, we don't want to give the guy $20 million a year, but we need a good one because there's definitely some value in that. And I think teams realize that for sure, right? And I think a team I'm going to take low-hanging fruit. I still love the Saquon Barkley move. I do. I think Saquon fits that system of the way they run, the way they play. And, Saquon, if there was any weakness to his game at all, it'd be well, he's not a sledgehammer, right, going to just go put his head down and drive the pile, 3 or 4 yards every play. That's not who he is, right? There's going to be a little dancing and moving because he's so great at that. He's going to look for yards that way to a degree. Well, Philadelphia is going to provide a formula of space for him that I think is conducive to him succeeding there. So I love that, okay? I really do. Now, Josh Jacobs and the Green Bay Packers, I love the potential of that, right? I think it was a smart contract with what they did. Basically a one-year deal that is 3-year options after that,
almost
right?
You pay as you go.
Right, because and I think that's the proper approach too. Josh Jacobs, in the doghouse with Josh McDaniels, overweight last year, right? I think he's one you got to kind of keep your eye on and hope he stays on his game when he's away from the facility. So that one, I like that for sure, right? And I think Green Bay with their offensive line, damn good as we saw. Plus, you add in Jordan Love and the ability to throw play action pass and all of that. I look at that and just go, yeah, that has potential to be something really, really special there. So those are maybe the two main ones. And then I think you throw in the Ravens and Derrick Henry. There's not a lot that I don't like here. We'll say that. But the Derrick Henry one's exciting for obvious reasons. Again, I think it's more of an environment that's conducive to what we used to see with Derrick Henry when he was rushing for 2,000 yards, right? And, hey, it's not going to have to be all about him. The problem with Derrick Henry the last 2 years especially is he's like, wait, in Tennessee, our O-line's not as good, and there's no pass game to defend at all that anybody's scared about. So it's all about stopping me. He's not going to have to worry about that anymore either, let alone he's got a good O-line. We know he's got Lamar. They got young weapons at receiver. And Derrick Henry now I think will be able to, when he's at his best, can get all the momentum going downhill, right? He's not he's got to stop behind the line of scrimmage like Saquon and jump cut and try to bounce it outside. That's not who he is. He needs a little space to get going. Then he becomes the locomotive and he becomes impossible to tackle. But I think those are the ones that probably jump out to me the most. But there's not many here that I don't like. I will say that.
I want to stick with Baltimore for a second because they're one of the most balanced run games in the NFL. When you look at what they do, it's almost an even balance of inside zone, counter, outside zone, power, and they even use pullers a lot.
They do.
What do you think that they lean on with Henry that maybe they couldn't always lean on with the committee they've had over the years? Is there something that they can unlock even more on with him?
Well, he's pretty good at both as far as zone and pulling guards, right? They did that in Tennessee and had a pretty good variety there in his career. Here's the one thing that I think jumps out to me, and what I think they need to, maybe reevaluate how they play a little bit. I do like when Lamar's underneath the center for them. Lamar's another one with play action pass. He's phenomenal, let alone the space it creates between the offensive line and defensive line and where you drop back to throw gives him great lanes to move and run and see the rush, right? So that would be the first thing I would say is, listen, I love Derrick Henry, I think, more at this point of his career, probably behind the pulling guards and all of that, right? Not that he can't do the zone stuff, but the zone stuff to me was more like Derrick Henry in his prime.
Sure.
Like, hey, I can kind of go out here to the right at like 80%. And just kind of pick and choose my hole. And when I see it, I'll hit it and go 100%. I feel like, hey, he doesn't have quite the same explosion he did a few years ago to where I'd want him behind one of my big pulling guards playing smash mouth football like that. But I wouldn't want him doing it. My point to where I was getting at is out of the shotgun all the time. Again, when you're in the shotgun and you hand the ball off, this, the first step or two by the running back are going to be sideline to sideline. They don't get going downhill. And I think that's when he's at his best, and I would hope that Baltimore messes with that a little bit more.
Yeah, Addy M27 sees it how you do. He said, I like what the Ravens did in signing Derrick Henry, and I think they need to run more under center with him rather than in shotgun. Titans 1313 asks, really had a comment. Tony Pollard, pathetic. $8 million a year for a mediocre running back who barely cracked 1,000 yards with a 4 yards per carry in a good offense. Did they even ever really try to re-sign Henry? Was this really your priority in free agency? It's like John Robinson never left. Disheartening for a fan base.
Yeah, so here was what I would say. First off, don't judge Tony Pollard just off of last year. Right. The first part of the year, he was not the same. He was coming off a broken fibula. He's a running back. Last time I checked, the lower leg's kind of important to run fast and make cuts.
For an explosive guy. Yeah.
Second thing I would say is that offense got some firepower, no doubt about it. Right. But I don't sit there, and you've heard me say this during the year last year, I don't think it's like, oh, wow, they're so creative, and they know how to use a guy like Tony Pollard to his total capacity anyways, right? That would be the thing I would say. And then, last year, they became definitely, even though Mike McCarthy started the year saying he wanted to run the ball, they became a pass-first football team. No doubt about that. And they were better playing through the pass game than they were opening holes in the run game. Pollard fits, all right, to the question, because it is a really good question at Titans 1313, right? Pollard fits what you guys are going to do on offense better now. That's the big thing, let alone he isn't in the prime of his career. And again, when he was healthy 2 years ago, he averaged 5 yards per carry, right? So that's where I think you're going to see more of that player, and he's got greater value in the pass game too, and I think that's the importance there. So, yeah, younger, in the prime, does have big play ability, right? You're going to see that this year. I don't doubt that at all. And then I think when you add that to the pass game aspect, which, again, they're going to be short passes, intermediate passes, and they're going to use the tailback a lot, he's going to be perfect for that.
Yeah, Pollard now obviously in a run game that we feel like Bill Callahan's going to have a huge hand in, of course, there. They
Definitely.
were, very outside zone heavy there in Cleveland, but Bill has run everything.
Bill's done everything.
Everything
right.
throughout his
Bill
NFL
does
life.
whatever he's got to do to win that game or wherever he thinks his offensive line is best as far as what scheme they block the best. So, yeah, they'll be ready. I mean, and then, Pollard to me has got some specialness about him. Again, don't go too harshly on grading him for what he was last year. And I don't think that Packers offense, the Cowboys offense, all that creative, nor did I think last year that they were some force that, oh, wow, they can just run the ball on anybody. That's not who they were either.
So we've talked about the stars. Yeah. Who on the list do you think is the most underrated move? Does it maybe get appreciated like the name value of Saquon or Josh Jacobs?
Right. Ooh, that's a good question.
Aaron Jones in Minnesota is interesting.
It's a really good fit. Right. It's health, it's size, it's age, it's all that. That's why you don't want to pay him that money.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, he's still got big play ability. And we saw him go 60 yards down the sideline in the last game we saw him in the divisional playoff game against the 49ers, right? So he has that ability. And another one for the Kevin O'Connell offense, now they got another weapon in the pass game. And I think the first time since Kevin O'Connell's been in Minnesota that they'll have a back out of the backfield that they'll go, ooh, like we can legit formulate, 10 to 15 plays a game around Aaron Jones and what he can do out of the pass game. And they haven't had that with Dalvin Cook or Madison last year. So that'll be a cool little element and new wrinkle they can bring to the offense. But I'm with you there. I like that a lot. I think Antonio Gibson's better than people realize, right? I think he will help out the New England Patriots. Who else did I want to hit on here, right? Joe Mixon's got some wearing. I mean, Joe Mixon still got some value out there, right? Joe Mixon behind that offensive line when they're healthy in Houston, and the physical nature and still in which he runs, I like that as well. I don't know. There's not one here that I look at and go, that's stupid, right, or I don't like that. Right? I don't. Now, I know we have Zach Moss as replacing Joe Mixon, but I think in my heart of hearts, Chase Brown will be the starter, and Zach Moss will be the guy that comes off the back.
Which he was great at last year.
Right.
He was
but
great.
A lot of system fits. Gus Edwards makes sense for the Chargers, right? Singletary makes sense for the Giants. And of course, the year he had and Dayball knowing him and him knowing the system and all that. So, that's where I like. The one I'm most interested in or have a question about is Austin Eckler in Washington. We're getting to that point where up there in years, certainly, definitely not as good as he used to be, right? I know Robinson's going to be the main guy there, but I am going to be interested to see Austin Eckler and kind of what he brings to that Commander's offense.
Right, and if he can be an upgrade in Gibson's role. I know the offense is going to be different than what they did with Bieniemy.
I've had a few people ask me that, like, oh, we upgraded, right, with Eckler over Gibson, and I'm like, I don't know if I feel that way. I'm sorry, right? I mean, I think Gibson is like when his toe is healthy and he's good, I think Gibson's a pretty damn good football player.
Yeah, maybe even a little bit more versatile. I mean, Eckler is truly a pass-catching back at this point.
Exactly right.
I think Gibson, he doesn't really get utilized in the run game, but he adds value to them. You can run between the tackles with Gibson. Like, there's no question about that. And, I think there is more versatility as far as, his scheme use and what he can do there. Yo, homies, what's up? I know it's the offseason, but it's never the offseason on Chris Simms Unbuttoned. Me and Ahmed Fareed are going to be here for it all. We got free agency. We're going to break it all down. The draft, the rankings of positions. Of course, we're going to unpack it all. Hit subscribe, get to my free agency reactions, 2024 draft rankings, and more. Thanks again for watching. Peace out, homies. See you soon.